She taught English to Spanish-speaking immigrants at night for free and founded the America's Disaster Relief, which aided various disaster-affected areas across the United States. Hello folks, Ozzy Stewart here, and welcome to the first episode of the Hard Issues in this season 9. I'm very grateful for you to be here on this tour of mine, and on this first episode, I'm shining light on my friend Jan France. A little bit about Jan. Jan France was born in Chicago to a mother who was an RN, a father who served in World War II, and a grandfather who served in World War I. She had devoted much of her time to giving and in service. In 1983, she conceived the idea for a wagon train. She organized it, was the executive director, the strategic planner, the coordinator, the fundraiser of about $3 million in sponsorships for the Texas Sesquicentennial Wagon Train, which covered 3,228 miles within the state. Planned the route to 150 overnight stops in 150 communities to represent the 150 years since Texas's independence. She created the logo, did the marketing, and drove the first wagon herself, accompanied by her daughter and assistant, Misty. Soon she had assistant and wagon masters such as Walt Garrison, fullback for the Dallas Cowboys, Tom Landry, head coach for the Dallas Cowboys, Gib Lewis, Speaker of the Texas House of Representatives, and others, with Governor Mark White of Texas riding in the front wagon with her. Sponsors such as Coca-Cola, Wrangler Jeans, Dairy Queen, Texas National Bank Dallas, Texas National Telephone Association, John Deere, American Honda Motor Company, Southwestern Bell Telephone Company, and others were in tow. Right after 9/11 in 2002 in Texas, Jan taught English to Spanish-speaking immigrants at night for free and aided various disaster-affected areas across Texas. She kicked into high gear using her marketing and organizational skills. Then, with leftover donations, she bought a 750 square foot thrift store, which expanded to 10,000 square feet, where 100% of the profits went to disaster relief. And in 2008, she built a food truck on a 16-foot flatbed trailer selling tamales and other items with partner groomer, volunteering 12 months a year for 7 years, with 100% of the net profits going to American Disaster Relief, serving areas from Colorado to Florida, Alabama, New Jersey, Oklahoma, Missouri, and then Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans in August 29, 2005. She even brought back people in need to her home from Katrina. She served also at Hurricane Sandy in 2012 when I met her while I was volunteering as well at Midland Beach, Staten Island, one of the worst hit areas, and we've stayed in touch ever since. In 2015, American Disaster Relief, progressed to a mobile kitchen where they no longer needed a commissary, where they had to pay to prepare tamales and foods or sleep in truck seats or motel rooms. They now have a shower, a bed, a restroom, kitchen, all with the mission of aid in mind. However, in the same year, Jan was diagnosed with kidney disease, now at the age of 70. Despite that disease and diagnosis, she continued to volunteer and fundraise for several years until last year, 2023, deciding to sell the mobile kitchen and cancel all events, still, however, volunteering and fundraising remotely. Her tireless efforts over the years have been an inspiration to many. In her early days, however, Ms. Jan went to New York Institute of Interior Design in New York, Barbizon. She even attended St. Petersburg College in Florida, became a showroom runway model, worked with Ford agency models, as well as in the past Sydney area, was a major furrier at that time. She was an equestrian, winning many blue ribbons with daughter and partner Sunday. She did ranch work, managing 30,000 acres, branding cattle, showmanship horses and cattle, and team penning, and some of the stuff I would like to do, actually. She holds certifications as certified radio marketing consultant, is a licensed real estate agent in Texas, and was the radio director of promotions and marketing, handled or designed sales packages and promotions and PR, copywriting, as well as being a host of talk shows. She was a motivational speaker at seminars, teacher of marketing classes, co-writer, co-director of commercials such as Ford, 7-Eleven, Coca-Cola, technical advisor for the movie Lone Star, selected sites, like a location manager that we call today, arranged and approved props and costumes, advised on angles and method with film crew and director. She marched with Martin Luther King, hello. She hugged Rosa Parks, give me a break, and others. Her mother's father was a promoter before TV, working with Jimmy Pickens, Minnie Pearl. What's the phrase Minnie Pearl would say? Howdy! And others. Friends with singer Brenda Lee, for those who know singing. Okay. On top of all of that, Jan was also a consultant to the state of Alaska, the state of Oklahoma, the state of South Dakota, state of Wyoming, the Texas Sesquicentennial Wagon Train. She was a residential general contractor and home designer in Florida and Texas, and holds honors from the state of Florida, Philadelphia, holds prestigious Texas Woman from the Texas House of Representatives, Outstanding Texas Woman, Texas Senate, Pioneer Woman Award, Marshall, Texas, Reserve Grand Champion Team Driving National Horse and Mule Association Finals in 1987, National Cowgirl Hall of Fame, Heritage Division, Texas Sesquicentennial Wagon Train Museum, Fort Worth Stockyards Exchange Building. She's featured in 5 books by Arcadia Publishing, Images of America, Texas Sesquicentennial Wagon Train by Jane L. Patsy, 1987. She has a star in the Western Heritage Walk of Fame, Fort Worth, Texas, below the star of Roy Rogers and Dale Evans. Below the star of Roy Rogers and Dale Evans. Other numerous awards and citations from Oklahoma, etc., 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 would take us another day. So we're going to go into some hard issues. So, Jan, talk to me about your grandfather.
My grandfather.
From the time he got off, he came out of the war, right?
In World War I, yes. He was in the Navy.
Right. And then he became a champion.
He was a welterweight champion of the South, yes, boxing.
And his sparring partner was?
My grandmother. They couldn't afford a sparring partner, and so my little grandmother, who was about 5'6", but very small boned, was his sparring partner.
So, in terms of work, coming out of the Navy, and what sort of work did he do?
Well, at one point, and I don't really know when, because he worked in where they smelted ore, which means they melted ore down, and he had bruises on his arm. Now, when that happened and where that happened, I really don't know, but he had big brown burn marks on his arm.
When was he involved with the Opry?
Okay, so then he was He was athletic director for the city of Chicago. And then they moved to Florida. And we followed them shortly thereafter. And while he was in Florida, he was a carpenter and a very skilled carpenter. And he built their home there that we were welcome to come to when the time came. But in the interim, he got involved with the Grand Ole Opry and the Ozark Jubilee in Louisiana Hayride. And then he became a promoter for that. And he traveled here and there and setting up the auditoriums because they didn't have the Reiner Auditorium in television at that time. Everything was on radio. You know, when Hank Williams is coming, he got in his car. He didn't have a big old bus, and got in his car, and they loaded it up with all the instruments and drank their way to the next event. But and then put on the show, and then went someplace else.
But you said your family followed him, but you learned a lot from him. And at what age were you sort of taken under his wing?
From the time I was born. He was there when I was born. My father was in the Pacific during World War II when I was born. And my grandparents were there. My mother had moved back into their home, so she didn't have to be a new mother by herself. And then she was also a nurse at that time. And so my grandparents had been in my life since the minute I was born.
So what are some of the things you learned and loved about your grandfather?
My grandfather he was a really good man. He really was. He was thoughtful, and if anybody ever wanted an ideal marriage, the marriage he and my grandmother had would have been the example to follow. Respect for her. I know they got aggravated with each other once in a while, but I never heard them argue or be ugly or anything like that to each other. Kind, loving, caring, giving people, both of them.
So at what stage were you sort of like on the road with him?
I was about 5 years old when I started going and doing things. He was also a square dance caller, and quite a renowned square dance caller, I found out later in life. I have many newspaper articles and whatnot about him. I didn't know he was that popular. He was just grandpa. And when I was 6, 7 years old, he would be teaching square dancing, and my grandmother would be there, and she'd take one square, and I'd be there, and I'd take another square, and she'd teach her square, and I'd teach my square, and I was like 6, 7 years old, and I was teaching people how to square dance.
You think that's where you got your love for dancing?
Oh, definitely got my love from dancing from my grandparents. They loved to dance. And being from the Tennessee hills, clogging was my grandmother's thing.
Wow, that's like river dancing, right?
Like the river dance, but except for clogging is more free-form style.
What was your relationship with your mother?
My mother and I were pretty close. I think of the 4 children that she had, my mother and I were the closest.
Where were you in terms of
I'm the oldest.
You're the oldest.
Oldest of 4 children, 2 girls, 2 boys.
What was your relationship with your mother? With your father?
With my mother, it was very good. The relationship with my father, I can't say we had one that was a positive relationship in any way. I don't have any happy memories, fond memories. Anything that he was involved in was negative. And I've searched really hard to try to find something that would have been positive. And I just really don't have it.
Was that because of the abuse that you received at his hand?
Oh, yes, definitely. He did not like me, didn't want me around, couldn't stand me.
How was he treating the others?
They were treated fine. And my sister, who's 3 years younger than me, he was closest to her. And then they had the 2 boys, but my sister Jane was close to my dad and not as close to my mother.
Did she or the others ever see the abuse that were they ever present?
Oh, yes.
Did you guys ever talk about that later on?
Oh, no. No.
Because you didn't allow it? Because
No,
they didn't bring it up? Or?
No. Anything that was said about my father, it was always somebody else's fault. My father was always right.
Got it.
For the three of them.
Okay, based on that, what sort of abuse was it?
Oh, I used to get beat so bad that I had welts and marks all over my body. It looked like a zebra, my legs and my torso. And I couldn't dress out for PE. I had to fail PE because I couldn't let everybody see my body in my gym shorts because they had belt marks everywhere and red blisters and sometimes bleeding open. They had,
Didn't the teachers ever see? Didn't they ever ask?
this was in the 1950s. Who cared? Nobody ever said anything.
What about your mother? I mean, something.
She used to take me to work with her at the nursing home, and geriatrics was her specialty. She would take me to work with her at night and she changed shifts so that she would be working while we were sleeping, and many nights. And I don't know if she knew my dad's attitude or whatever for that particular day. But then she'd tell me I was going to work with her, and I slept many nights in the lobby at the nursing homes, and I knew all of her patients and things like that, so just to keep me away. And my grandfather collared my father numerous times about how he talked to me and treated me, but it didn't change. It just got more secretive, or if I told, then I would get even worse.
What were some of the things that you weren't allowed to? So in terms of schooling, right? You had to fail PE.
Yeah.
Of all things.
Well,
what were the other things that you were?
I wasn't allowed to participate in any after-school activities at all. Zero. Fourth grade was the maypole, and they had like at 6 o'clock at night, and then you did the maypole on May 1st, and I wasn't allowed to do that, go and do that. I was supposed to sing for the fourth grade class over the rainbow, and I was going to be Dorothy, but I wasn't allowed to do that because that was for parents' night. It was after school. I wasn't allowed to participate in sports at all. And I was one of the fastest runners in the school, even with the boys, but I couldn't go to any track meets or anything because I only could do that at gym on the days that I was able to dress out.
And when you say dress out, meaning
putting a gym suit on
because
shorts or anything,
right? Because you
couldn't participate if you didn't have your gym clothes on.
And even with that, you wouldn't be able to see the marks.
Oh, well, yeah, with my gym shorts on, they're shorts, and my legs always look like a zebra because my father hit me any place. And the other part about that was not only did I get whipped with the belt, I had to take all my clothes off to do that. I had to be totally nude. Not even in the underwear was allowed on when I got beat. And if I didn't, he ripped them off of me.
What was there anything that you had said or done that caused, or was it something he got drunk, he came in?
My father didn't drink.
Okay.
No, he didn't drink.
Was he?
And he didn't do drugs or anything like that. We didn't even have alcohol in our home.
Somebody told him something. He was.
Perfect example. I was 15 years old. I was washing dishes in the kitchen sink. My father was out in the backyard. I washed dishes on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and my sister washed them on Tuesday, Thursdays, and Saturdays, and then we switched off every other Sunday. I was washing the dishes. I was in the kitchen by myself, just doing my kitchen stuff, and I saw him come in front of the window at a high rate of speed in the backyard. He came in the side door, which went into a utility room that then came into the kitchen. He went in that door, high rate of speed, went through the kitchen and went to his room. Heard a bunch of clattering going on in his room, and I was like, what in the world is he doing in there? And the next thing he did is he came out with a machete, and he said, I'm going to kill you. I can't stand you any longer. And he tried to kill me, and I dove underneath the kitchen table, and he's stabbing, and I'm screaming, and he's yelling. And
Nobody else in the house?
My mother and my grandmother were in the house, and they came running. He broke my grandmother's foot. My mother was, by this time, had gained quite a bit of weight. She sat on him, and my grandmother was trying to sit on him, and they're yelling for me to run. They had him on the floor, and he was 6'2", 6'3", so he wasn't, like a short person or anything. And so I ran, and then the neighbors called the police, and police came, and they took us to the police station, took him to the police station, took me to the police station in a separate vehicle. In a couple of hours, they sent him home. And me. And that was that.
You,
And that was 1960. I was 15 years old.
You had told me an incident that he did to you at the age of 15, 16.
Which incident?
Checking you.
Oh, since I was maybe 10 years old, I could go out there and make mud pies and come in clean. Now, my daughter, Misty, she could sit in a chair and get dirty. But and just the difference in the way people are. Sunday is like me. She could go out and play in mud and come in clean. Misty could sit in a chair and
figure out how to get dirty.
Right. When she was a child, they're not that way. I mean, she's not that way now.
Right.
But I've never been. I could rope cows and brand and do whatever. And I'm not dirty.
Right.
I just don't get dirty. I'm a clean, dirty person. I don't know. I just don't get dirty. And since that I can remember, it could have been before this, but I remember since I was 10 years old, before I was allowed out of the bathtub, I'd have to put my hands above my head, totally naked. As puberty came along, I tried covering up with a washcloth, but I had to take that away and turn around so he could see if I was clean or not. And that happened until I was 16. Now, he never physically touched me.
That was going to be my next question. So you had nobody to talk to?
No, because my grandfather passed away when I was 14.
So with him passing away, did things get worse? Or?
Oh, things got a lot worse.
In what way?
Well, the day
I can't imagine in what way, but what way?
Yeah, well, it could have been worse. He could have violated me,
Right.
but he did never touch me,
Right.
other than beating me. But,
Right. So when you were bleeding and you were beaten, other people were in the house while that was happening?
the children,
The
the
children?
other siblings were.
And
My mother was never there when that happened.
that's why she took you away when she could.
That's why she took me when
When she could, but then it's to
Remember.
save you from...
And for a long time, I kind of, as I grew older, resented that. But then I kind of outgrew that in a way because my mother was born in 1923 and came up through the Depression and came up through the time where, you had to have a man in your life and men were everything and they were the boss. And, it was a different time period. But it took me years of maturity to get to that point because I was very angry with my mother after I got old enough and got away from home that I realized that.
So you're going to school, you're not able to do many things. You're going through what you're going through with your dad and you begin to work. Why?
Oh, I started working when I was 13 because, well, just here's another thing of abuse and it ties into the work. We would get allowance every Friday. Mm-hmm. And every Friday he would come home and he would stop at Sears, and I don't know why Sears maybe is the only place to go, I don't know. And he would buy a bag of candy, I guess a couple of pounds of candy. And everybody was able to put their hand in the bag and take a handful of candy corn or whatever it was he bought, jelly beans or whatever it was that he bought that week. And I would always get 2 pieces of whatever it was. My hand never went in the bag. Now, everybody else put their hand in the bag and pull out their handful. I was always given 2 pieces.
Have you ever asked your mom, like, what was it that he had against? What could it have been? Did she ever have any thoughts?
Yes, we've had that discussion, and nobody knows. The only thing we can think of is that I was 6 months old when he came home from the war, and I was there. He left a newly married wife and came home to a wife and baby, and he resented it. That's the closest we can come. Now, going back to the pay, everybody got 25 cents a week allowance, and I always got a nickel. Now, I'm the oldest. I was the one that was responsible for everything, did the most of the household things, and I ironed.
I'm an oldest too, I know that.
So, I'm responsible for the younger kids and make sure this is done or they don't do that. But I got a quarter, they got a quarter, and I got a nickel. Every Friday, they got a quarter, I got a nickel. And this went on until, so then when I turned 13, I was always tall for my age. I was 5'7", when I was 12, 13 years old. And so I went to work, and I worked at the State Theater, selling popcorn and dill pickles and drinks and stuff. And he took my paycheck every time, but now I didn't ever get any of it back. The only thing I got back was enough for bus fare. And so then I got a second job at Brown's Shoes, and they paid me in cash, and I didn't tell him about the second job, so I was able to squirrel away some money.
So before you get to that, in terms of schooling, he did things to you that kept you back.
Oh yes,
kept you down.
When I was the stupidest person in the world. I wasn't smart enough to do this. I wasn't smart enough to do that. And my whole life, and way into me being an adult, and all those things that you read about me doing, it's just like, wow, when I hear it read, I'm going like, I did do all those things. How could I have been how could anybody have thought I was so stupid or tell me how dumb I was all my growing up life and come out and have done all these things with the lack of education, formal education that I've had? How did this all could have been to somebody that was supposedly so stupid? Not just dumb, but stupid, not able to learn.
Talk about what he did with reference to the...
Well, in second grade, he held me back in the second grade. He held me back in the 8th grade twice.
And all your friends were advanced.
And all my friends, by the time I was still in the 8th grade, my dad kept having them hold me back. I was still in the 8th grade, and my friends that I had gone to elementary school were graduating from high school. And I was still supposed to be in the 8th grade, so I just quit.
Went to work, and what was your plan? You saved a little money?
I saved money. I didn't actually have a plan, but I just knew that whatever plan was going to materialize, I was definitely going to have some money for it. And
no stupid person would think about that, but let's go ahead.
Yes. So I squirreled away money, and now I was kind of physically safe until my grandfather passed away. But then after my grandfather passed away, I didn't have the rescue to go to him. And he kind of knew what was going on. And he, like I said, he collared my dad several times and pushed him up against a building. My father never hit him back or anything. And think my grandfather would have loved for him to have done that because he could have taken
being
care
the
of
champion
him.
that he was.
Yeah, being the boxer that he was. But
So your next move was?
so my next move was I went to New York City. I'm trying to juggle these huge suitcases, and I'm dropping them. I'm spilling. I'm tripping.
But you talked about meeting somebody on the plane,
But
right?
the man that I was sitting next to on the plane, who was a very nice young man, we just chatted. He came by and he was walking along pretty briskly, and he had told me he was an attorney, and he had given me his card, and he's, if you ever need anything. I told him I was going to New York City, and he said, what for? And I said, I don't know yet. And so he passed me carrying his small briefcase or whatever, and then he turned around and looked, and he says, aren't you the one I was just sitting next to on the plane? And I said, yes. And he says, well, let me help you with your luggage. And so he did. He took the big one, and then I could manage the smaller one in the train case.
Because at that time, those old suitcases, strong as they were, they didn't have wheels.
No, they didn't have wheels, that's for sure. And he had a limo that was picking him up, and he says, if you don't have a ride, he says, I'll take you where you need to go. And so I'm going like, okay. And I only had $200 in my pocket. That's all I had left after buying the plane fare. And so I said, okay. And so I took a chance on getting in a car with a strange man, but it was a limo, so he wasn't the driver. So I felt like, okay, I might be a little bit better safe. And he was very nice. And so he took me in the limo, and he kept asking me where I wanted him to take me. And I don't know. I said, I don't know. I don't know. And so he says, I've got a sofa at my place. If you need to sleep on the sofa, he says, you're welcome near. And I took him up on it, and that was a big risk because a lot of things could have happened that did not happen. He was a total gentleman. And I don't even know today what his name is.
Really?
I don't.
You lost the card?
I lost the card.
Okay.
And but it was on the east side, and you could see the East River from his apartment. And that's all I can remember. Even like a week later, I couldn't have gone back because I just didn't know. And he gave me $500 the next morning. He said, here's $500. And he says, if you get to a situation after you've been here a while and you get a situation where you can pay it back, that'll be fine. If not, don't worry about it. And he gave me $500. So now I had $700. Well, that was a lot of big help mentally.
And then from there, your journey went through, and you got through to.
Then I got on the phone book at his place, and he had a phone, and I called the different hospitals because I'd spent so much time in the hospital. I figured I could get a job at a hospital doing something because I know something. And I did. I got a job at a rural general hospital, and
didn't last long. But you moved from there to Barbizon and modeling and whatnot. Question for you: did you ever talk to your folks? I mean, when you told anybody that nobody knew that you were in New York?
My mother knew I was in New York.
She knew that you were leaving?
No, she did not know I was leaving.
How did
Lord,
she know?
she would not have approved of that at all. And then after my father broke my grandmother's foot, she went to live with her son, my mother's brother, in Tennessee.